Hey everyone, this is Isaac. I'm CEO at Trullion, and today on AI Accounting Intelligence, we'll be talking with real people about real things related to AI and the impact on the accounting industry. Stay tuned. All right. Hey everyone, this is Isaac Heller with the Accounting Intelligence Podcast. I'm pretty excited today to have a fun conversation with Kris Bonatti, CEO co-founder of Hudson Labs, formerly Bedrock, for all you fans. Kris, it's good to talk to you today.
It's really great to talk to you, Isaac. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I think we're going to get into some fun conversations about entrepreneurship and maybe some like philosophical accounting and audit world conversations as well. But before we jump in, Kris, I saw like last week, I think, or the past few weeks, like an article in Forbes or somewhere of the woman who predicted the Supermicro kind of failure, which was in the news recently. What is Supermicro, and how did your company or your team kind of predict it? What went on there, and how'd you get called out pretty big?
Well, Supermicro is a publicly listed company that was recently added to the S&P 500, I believe, but they've seen insane growth, in part driven by the AI hype machine, and also what looked like real numbers. But at the same time, they were very clearly disclosing some very abnormal business practices involving a complicated related party network. And to anyone who has experience with fraud, looking at how fraud is perpetrated, looking at how earnings management, I don't want to say fraud was actually happening at Supermicro, but when you look at how aggressive earnings management is perpetrated, what that generally looks like, the way that Supermicro was set up in a way that looked like it was meant for that, to be frank. And we have an AI-driven platform that assesses both forensic risk, the likelihood of an SEC enforcement action related to fraud, and also highlights concentrated related party risk. Supermicro was flashing red on all of those screens for a very, very long time for very obvious reasons. I think any forensic accountant going through those financial statements would have come to exactly the same conclusion that our models came to. And we publicly highlighted those risks multiple times over the years. And then when the Hindenburg report came out, the short report came out on the company by a famous short seller named Hindenburg, and the stock price cratered. Then their auditor quit or resigned, and didn't do it in a way that was particularly polite, which reinforced the allegations of the short seller. And I published something on LinkedIn that just said, hey, look, guys, this isn't news. And that LinkedIn post got picked up by Forbes and later by CNBC.
That's awesome, Kris. And for the record, I've followed Kris and Hudson Labs and Bedrock for a while. It's a small community, but following a lot of your stuff on Twitter and LinkedIn. So we'll get into that. We'll also get more into the entrepreneurial journey and what your company actually does. But it's funny, just to start with Supermicro. So you mentioned Supermicro is an AI company, which is all the rage right now. You're an AI company too, which is pretty cool. So it's like AI versus AI. But
so they're on the hardware side
the hardware side.
Yeah, okay, they make servers, data centers, that sort of area of the AI infrastructure.
Very nice. Okay, yeah. So we're almost all powered by AI in a different way these days. But it's interesting because the way you talk about Supermicro is almost like, well, hey, it felt pretty obvious that something was going on here, right? And I, Kris, from my point of view, was able to see that with a little bit of AI and maybe even with some basic reasoning. Yet a Big Four auditor a layer below was not able to identify that. And so, there's a question here because the Big Four is well regarded and earns a lot of money maintaining the I guess balance of financial reporting and language of business. Like, is it kind of? Do you think that accounting and audit is kind of in an equilibrium right now where they don't really want or need to kind of catch the fraud or be overly scrutinous on the financials? Was this a one-off, an anomaly, or are there a few more super micros, lurking and a I would call you a casual observer versus an auditor who knows the financials. A more casual observer could be able to catch it over an auditor. Is this a one-time thing? Or are we looking at more? And is it just in this complacent world right now for us?
So I'm going to actually come in defense of Ernst& Young and
Okay.
EY. So possibly
By
a
the way,
hot
big
take.
EY fan. Sorry, I just want to say
Oh, big.
also big, a big EY fan. We had Trullion
Mm,
work with EY. We
right.
love EY. They just happen to be in the news on this one, and everyone, all the Big Four get their shots. So we are both defenders of EY, but go for it.
No, but more specifically, I want to defend the audit profession because
Yeah,
I think EY did their job, which was to enforce transparency at Supermicro. Obviously, EY wasn't there going, hey, this company was previously settled with the SEC and continues to have aggressive sales practices, but we don't pay EY to monitor the aggressiveness of the sales practices of their client. We do pay them to make sure that the related party note is robust and detailed. And it was. I think that the risk was appropriately communicated to investors. The fact that investors chose to ignore it is not EY's problem. And I actually have, um, I think if we're trying to fix fraud or reduce fraud, I don't actually think that improving audit or changing the ways that audits happen is going to go a long way in achieving that goal. Um, in fact, one of the first articles I wrote that got attention in this space was called "Why Fixing Audit Won't Fix Fraud."
very interesting. Okay, good. So, it sounds like, we're from your perspective, EY did its job to bring the risks to the surface. And where you sit, Kris, is almost more as a peer to the investor community and the folks that are looking and researching these companies and trying to look for signals, which is really interesting. And it kind of makes us complementary in our entrepreneurial past because we, truly, and we're like trying to get into the data at the corporate audit level and trying to help auditors and accountants become more efficient, which is actually getting into the data. Whereas you're at the layer of looking at those numbers and interpreting, whether they're accurate or whether they tell a kind of a different story. So either way, very interesting and very cool that you and your team were able to pick up on it. So for anyone listening, they might not even know that much more about you or Hudson Labs. So, I mean, before we keep going, tell us a little bit about yourself, your entrepreneurial journey, really to Bedrock and now Hudson Labs. What's it been like?
It's been fun.
You're a KPMG alum?
I
Oh,
am a KPMG
that's
alum.
right.
Yeah, KPMG Toronto. I worked in mining,
Shout
auditing
out,
mining
shout
companies.
out
Yeah.
mining to the mining accountants in Toronto. Big shout out here.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have an accounting background?
No, busted. I have an accounting passion. I fell in love with my GAAP and IFRS classes at a nighttime MBA program. Right. Shout out to Suresh, my professor in Dallas. I do not have a CPA, but I did an ASC 606 overhaul for a pre-IPO tech company. I feel like that gave me some kind of badge.
That's fantastic. Well, I also no longer have a CPA designation. I chose to stop paying my dues, so we're the same. I
Right.
also often feel like at this point, it's been a fair few years here since I actually worked as an accountant, and my actual accounting expertise, it can barely be considered CPA level at this point.
Very nice. Well, you could get back on track with 149 hours left after this podcast. It would be nice if you could like transfer or sell your CPA license, like those New York taxi medallions. Like I would just take that. But anyway, so you're not at CPA level anymore. You at some point how did you get like twist and turn from KPMG accounting CPA to now CPA to CEO?
Yeah. So I was a CPA working at KPMG. I quit more or less as soon as I got my CPA, as many people do, which I think was surprising to everyone because I did actually enjoy the job, which I seems somewhat unusual these days. But I had already had a background in stats and econ, and wanted to get more involved in data analytics, data science, which was emerging at the time. Went back to school for a master's program 1 year. Learned a lot during that program, but also did a lot of self-teaching around learning to code, learning Python, and got a job as a data scientist coming out of that 1 year master's, which was great. And also got a job teaching Python programming at an AI boot camp, which was really fun. But it was through that role as a data scientist, because I was working at a corporate governance advisory firm. I had the background, the corporate background, where I really understood securities filings. I really understood the corporate space well. So because of that joint background, ended up specializing in corporate text processing. So pre-language model, natural language processing, primarily, and got a lot of attention for that work, despite being aware of all the incredible things that were happening with language models and AI at the time. And the way I ended up founding this company was, really looking at the gap between what I was doing that was considered state of the art and being aware that, Grammarly existed and autosuggest existed and the state of the art looked very, very different. And there's a big opportunity to take the language models being used in consumer technology and apply it to my space.
That's awesome. And I think later if we have time, we should get into some AI and, kind of what you're saying is there's these big, broad AI and now open source LLM models. And then there's these nice little slices of the world where you need more specialized and dedicated kind of AI expertise, right? Even within the accounting world, there's dozens or maybe hundreds of different slices where you need to kind of go deeper. But we'll save that for another time. Just trying to think. So you're in Toronto, right? When you go from KPMG to data science, right? You're in New York today. Fair to say?
Yes.
Okay, got it. And so in Toronto has like a huge AI community, don't they? Like Waterloo, there's some university that cranks out the is that right? Is it like a avant-garde, like early AI community in Toronto that kind of you gravitated towards? Like, was there an entrepreneurial AI led community that pulled you in? How did you just jump in?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Toronto is an incredible place for
Yeah.
AI and AI research, and that's how I met my co-founder, Suhas Pai, who is the LLM guy. Someone stopped him on the street the other day and went, "Hey, are you the LLM guy?"
Really?
Uh,
That's like his name. He's the LLM guy. That's
he's
his.
the LLM guy. Yeah, I mean,
Okay, Suhas, we'll
yeah,
have to. Yeah, we've got an LLM guy at Trullion. You'll have to have you guys talk. But that's awesome. So you and Suhas meet in this cool community of AI lovers.
he was leading the language modeling, natural language processing specific stream of the AI research community. There's this research community called Aggregate Intellect Socratic Circles, ACE, a bit of a mouthful. And it's a great community. A lot of people just get together, read through research papers, etc. And Suhas was leading that, and that's how we originally connected, and how I was a lot more involved in seeing and experiencing the really incredibly cool, actually state-of-the-art projects that other people were working on while I was still a relatively junior data scientist.
Interesting. I'm curious, like there might be some people listening here who are starting their accounting career, going into audit, or maybe in audit and thinking about the next steps. Thinking back to when you were in those KPMG auditor shoes, do you think that it's different, much different today in terms of, like, I don't know, the choices, the opportunities? Meaning, would you tell people now, get out of audit faster, spend more time in audit, specialize differently, go to consulting, don't go to consulting? Like, have things changed now, a few years later?
I was talking to a partner at one of the big four yesterday, at asking all sorts of questions about how audit has changed. But frankly, Isaac, I don't know. I feel pretty pretty disconnected from the actual day-to-day uh, lives of accountants and the opportunities out there. It does seem, you know, from where I'm sitting, high-level accounting expertise, really smart accountants, AI is not coming for your job. So it's a great place to be specialized. I think there's going to continue to be really great opportunities. And because accounting and audit is so painful, if you like it, if you love it, if you're into it, stick with it.
There
That's
you go.
that's that's my my piece of advice.
I like it. So
Yeah.
nothing new under the sun. Just AI is the next technology. Excel was technology. You know, databases is technology, and AI is some level of technology that will kind of settle and still maybe need a lot of that specialization, I guess you could say. But Kris, I think it's awesome that you learned Python and data science. I was talking to Nick Boucher. He's a finance influencer. Shout out to Nick, like AI Finance Club, really cool guy. And he's now teaching courses, Python for accountants, Python for CPAs, and it's getting a lot of traction. And it's almost like more of a response to AI, right? Like, the AI
Mm.
is here, and you could potentially be more powerful leveraging the AI if you could just turn the corner and learn some Python and data science. Do you think that holds? Meaning, do you think that there's a stronger and stronger demand for Python experts that are CPAs as well, or again, same as before?
Oh, I think it's hugely beneficial to be learning to code as an accountant and most other professions. But I don't think that's necessarily relevant to AI per se. You can achieve so much with web scraping, more powerful data analysis, being able to do work in pandas, which is the Python equivalent of Excel, can really accelerate your work and your role. And back in the day, what I had people from KPMG coming to me going, "Oh, hey, you run an AI company now. How should we use AI in audit?" And I was going, "You have implemented zero automation software. Why don't you just start there and then think about AI?" You know, when I left audit, we were still looking at an invoice and looking at this sheet over here and taking this number and putting it over there. Why not just automate that with very simplistic software before you think about advanced state of the art AI?
Interesting. Yeah, and I think that's a lot what we felt at Trullion, and that exact use case. We have like a data match automation. Okay, interesting. You mentioned first of all, I heard pandas. Is that like that's the Python
It's a
Excel?
library within Python. It's the data frame library. So it's Excel in Python. So you're working with another version of a spreadsheet, but it's just a faster and more powerful and generally connected with your data source directly so you can do more.
Got it. And for those of you who are afraid of Python like me and jumping in, knowing the lingo like pandas is really good because you can hang out with a wider range of people and sound dangerous or smart. So maybe we'll glean a few more of those along the way. But you mentioned Python. You mentioned web scraping, a few other things. I don't know if you told us what Hudson does. Like if I'm listening right now or watching, like I'm going to check out Hudson, but what should I want to do with it? Hudson Labs, right?
So
HudsonLabs.com.
it's hudson-labs.com.
Amazing. Okay. And what do we do with it?
So we specialize in finance specific language modeling, or LLMs, where we're extracting and organizing complex information in securities filings and other types of financial disclosure. So one example that's more on the accounting audit side is we're the only complete real-time provider of SOX weaknesses. We're the only
Ooh,
complete real-time provider of going concern warnings, or bankruptcy risk warnings. I always say that because my audience half the time doesn't know what a going concern warning is. Um, but we extract and organize unstructured data in financial disclosure and make it accessible to corporate stakeholders, which would primarily be investors, hedge funds, asset managers, but we also work with insurers, plaintiff class action firms, et cetera.
got it. Awesome. So I mean, look, if there probably could be some creative or innovative use cases for you know advisory firms that are looking to understand, control weaknesses, material weaknesses, basically signals, right?
Yeah.
For clients that
And
may need help. Yeah.
that is where we do overlap with accounting professionals. Is we do help accounting software providers, risk advisory professionals with business development. So if you specialize in um, business combinations or transactions accounting, we can give you a real-time feed of every single public company who's reporting having issues or a SOX weakness specific to business combinations.
That's awesome. Very interesting. Okay, so we'll have to, and we'll put some a link to Hudson after this. But I learned about Hudson. By the way, if I say Bedrock for anyone listening, it was previously Bedrock. So I guess I'm like an OG fan. Is that fair to say? So I would go on Twitter and I would follow. I would be interested in some of the stuff that you guys were putting out, and you specifically. And I think that's like I'm starting to learn myself, like it's a big part of entrepreneurship, which is building the brand and using your kind of unique insights or skill sets to shout, right, and tell people what you're doing and what you think and stuff like that. I mean, did you ever think about building a brand for yourself, or curating this, what they call like influencer baseline or whatever, or did you just do what you did and it kind of went from there?
I personally have not thought. I would prefer not to be an influencer, if humanly possible.
Yeah.
But I do recognize that it's an important part of growing a business, et cetera. So most of what we did early on was coming from the company rather than from me, and or coming from our employees rather than from me. But you're right that putting out our thoughts publicly, and being very open with sometimes spicy takes was huge in getting early attention. Our first customers were all from a Substack interview someone did with me about whether auditors can find fraud, actually.
Interesting.
Um, and all of our subsequent press generally came not from us pitching stories, but from journalists seeing the work that we did and wanting to write something like that, or write a follow-up piece on it, or something to that effect.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean I think that's a good point. I think some of the best kind of content, let's call it, is from people that aren't trying to be influencers, because it kind of self-selects for stuff that you just find interesting, instead of kind of forcing one to push out ideas every day, which may dilute the ideas, or distill the ideas. um, but like at this point, I mean, you're CEO of a company, you're figurehead. Like, do you have to remind yourself once a week to put something out there, or you just straight up, if I have a good idea that day or two or three, I'm going to share it. Or is it like an alarm? Is it like an iPhone alarm? Like, look for fraud today and post about it Tuesday, 3 p.m.
No, frankly, we had more of a content, social media focused strategy in the past. And at this point, it's not a core part of our strategy. Maybe that will change, but I'd love to hear your experience. I feel like that's
Oh,
something that you do quite well. I mean, you posted something about me that got an extraordinary amount of engagement.
did it? I
Yeah.
don't know. What can I say about this? I agree with you that I'm not trying to be an influencer. I have a couple colleagues that are marketing gurus that encourage me to share my thoughts and post, and so that helps boost it. And sometimes it's just fun.
Yeah.
I just realized it's fun. So what we're doing now, like AI, accounting intelligence, I didn't wake up and say I wanted to do a podcast. It was like, hey Isaac, this would be a really good idea to do it.
Mhm.
And now I got to meet you, and I got to meet Larry, and I got to meet all these other cool people and have conversations with them before, after, stay in touch and stuff like that. And so in retrospect, like, kind of putting myself out there, to try to help the Trullion brand has been positive for me, because I get to, meet some interesting people. Or you'll get a LinkedIn message, hey, I saw you talked about, Supermicro or whatever. I love that. And then you make a friend. So yeah, it's kind of been like like a rewarding process. Um, and but I mean, I have no science to it. In fact, I will I will post things and then delete them an hour or two later, because I just like think about it again. I'm like, that's stupid. Don't that's, nobody cares about that. So whatever makes it is kind of a crapshoot, I guess you could say. Um,
Yeah. That is the part that I find challenging is it tends to take up like how much headspace is that's the taking up versus the value.
right.
And social media has a way of taking up more headspace than you plan for.
Hmm.
Like I go, okay, I just posted this. I'm not going to check the angry things that people are saying until tomorrow. And I think one interesting part of our marketing strategy in the past was in order to get people to engage with our posts, we would say controversial things about a specific top stock.
Right.
And the point is to drive engagement, right? We know that that's going to elicit a very positive response from a select group and a very negative response from a select group. And the negative response is going to include people who are looking at your LinkedIn, they're Googling your name, they're trying to find dirt on you and see the meanest thing that they can possibly come up with, which in theory is simply amusing, but it does
Right.
take up a bit more headspace than just sending out a whole bunch of email or LinkedIn outbounds.
So can you think of like one time where someone sent you a DM, like you posted something and maybe it was accounting or fraud, someone sent you a DM or post and you were like, "Whoa, I didn't, I didn't get into this business."
There's been a few.
Okay.
The highest profile one, this is so high profile that Harvard Business School reached out to write a case study about it.
Okay.
And I didn't realize that it was so notable. But what happened? There is a former hedge fund manager that has a very large following on Twitter, now a large retail following, even though he started out as sort of a more short focused hedge fund manager. He now is really excited about specific stocks and gets in very bitter fights. So we knew that this individual would A, has a huge following, and B, is easy to engage.
It's
So
not it's
we,
not Dan Loeb, is it?
no, it is
Okay,
not.
Dan's one of our investors, so I want to make sure I wasn't uh, Good. So it's
No,
one of
not
these
Dan.
activists. Got it. I understand. Okay.
Yeah, but he no longer runs a fund, this
Okay. Got it.
person. Uh, so we responded to a positive tweet about the specific stock at a VIX, and highlighted some risks at that stock. Uh, we expected him to get a little bit mad. He did get a little bit mad. That tweet did well. What I didn't expect was he would get in touch directly. He ended up getting my number. He ended up calling me. But when you get on the phone with me, it's so much easier to get mad at someone on Twitter. You get on the phone with me, I'm a reasonable person. You know, that conversation de-escalated very, very quickly. And we ended up having this nice cordial relationship for a long time where we, text each other, and he'd tell me I needed to update my models because they were all wrong because they were rating some of the stocks he liked as high risk. But it was very cordial. And then for a while. And then one day, the stock that we had been critical of, or not necessarily critical, just raised some risks. It's a very volatile stock, so the stock price ripped. It went way up. And he, all of a sudden, hadn't heard from him in a while, retweeted our original post about the risks, saying something along the lines of, "Best tear apart your models, darling," something mean, sent
Yeah.
me a bunch of DMs,
You know,
and
that old darling snarky comment, you know?
yeah, sent me a variety of very nasty DMs, and Harvard Business School. Uh, I was looking at this sort of smiling to myself, because it was incredible free publicity. And he's made so many enemies, and all of his enemies started following us on Twitter, which are mostly people we want to sell into. So it all seemed
Oh,
very
wow.
positive. But Harvard Business School, I guess, saw this high profile tweet criticizing us and decided it was a risk to our business and wanted to see how we overcome that risk, etc., which I found funny.
This is I mean, this is hilarious. Like, you never know what you get into. Have you read the book, Money Men, about the Wirecard,
I
scandal, or watched the
haven't. I
Netflix?
should. I
Okay,
haven't.
got it.
No.
I'm trying to think who it's in my office. One second. Uh, the author's Dan McCrum. Dan McCrum was an FT Financial Times
Yeah.
reporter. He's a great reporter. And
Hmm.
just for those of you watching, it's the movie. The book is Money Men. There is a Netflix movie about it, and it is about the Wirecard scandal in Germany. Wirecard was hot fintech company up and down, and there were just a lot of people on both sides, short sellers and bold investors, talking about Wirecard. And the reason I mention that is because if you read the book, it like goes into Russian espionage and armed men confronting you at the door and stuff like that. And so that's an extreme, okay? But it is kind of funny to uncover this world of people take this stuff pretty intensely. But I agree. I mean, social media is like another world. But when these things happen, do you step back? Maybe just moving on to like Hudson Labs and in general, like, do you step back and say, like, what is my purpose with Labs? Like, what am I really trying to do? Am I trying to drive more transparency? Am I trying to, build a successful business and create some jobs and have some fun? Like, what's the mission that anchors you?
Oof.
Yeah,
Not a hard question at all. But
yeah,
no, this is something that we talk about, Silas and I, weekly. Are we achieving our mission? What's the most important thing for us to be focused on right now? But I am so interested and concerned and excited about uh, how companies communicate to stakeholders and how that information is consumed. I think there's a very interesting balance between the burden of disclosure and the burden of preparing that information. And it can definitely become too much. It's costly. And given that we are investing so much, it's so important that this information is actually making it in front of the people who are supposed to be using it to make decisions. And a lot of people don't realize how poorly that process is going right now and how much information is getting lost and isn't necessarily being consumed by the investor community or other corporate stakeholders, despite the fact that we're spending so much time and effort to make sure that everything agrees and looks perfect and that Note 22 is compliant. And AI is such an incredible opportunity to extract, organize, and simplify what is a very complicated and hard to understand disclosure regime. And AI also has the opportunity to go beyond just what's in the SEC filing, but also collate and collect all of the other information that's being communicated in non-regulated or formats as well, which is hugely necessary. And people always come to me going, oh, AI is such a huge risk. We have not innovated in this space in such a long time. There's so much opportunity. The risk is not in using AI for extracting and organizing and doing what you're doing on the internal side. The risk is in not doing it. Because we're in a situation now where there's so much complexity and we've seen a lot less innovation, a lot less focus in this space compared to consumer technology, for instance.
Interesting. Like it's kind of a nice arc in terms of the mission of Hudson, because it starts out like this stuff is interesting to me. Like this area is interesting to me. I'm passionate about it. And then you start to dig in and you're like, people are spending money and there's cost and there's risk and there's appetite. And then you start playing with the technology, AI, right? AI is a generational technology, right? There's things like this every once in a while, and this is one of those things that has some superpowers. You start playing with it, and then it's like this angst of like, what more could I do? Why isn't everyone else using it? Like, okay, I know there's risks, but I've looked at the risks and I agree those are risks, but those aren't risks. It could actually be very, very valuable. So it's kind of like the arc of, I would say, a lot of entrepreneurs and innovators these days, is it just starts like you're having fun, or at least for me. Like it was this ASC 606 thing, and I was like, this is crazy. We're reading all the contracts and we're putting in the spreadsheets, and then the auditors aren't checking it, or having to pay more to the auditors for a new standard, because they have to audit outside of the ERP. Why doesn't it go into the ERP? And you start asking questions, and then there's IFRS and ASC and SOX and ESG, and these questions keep coming up. And so I don't know, it's just self-fulfilling, but it's, it all goes back to just having a little fun. But we would
Do you
be,
still feel
what's
like you're
that?
just having a little fun, Isaac?
Oh yeah. I mean, I've lost some hair over the years, but like I'm having a lot of fun,
That's great.
I think that's the most important. And I would say the other cool thing about AI is AI has been like this, I don't know, centrifugal force, or like this torque. And what I mean by that is, you and I, we've been at this for about 5 years. I saw on your profile, like when, at least for Trullion, when we jumped into AI, this was 2019, the first use case was related to OCR, right? It was OCR for documents. I'm sure
Yeah.
you and Suhas have been there, done that. And that was cool because of the new compliance standards, which brought contracts onto the balance sheet or made them more interesting, and contracts, meaning like the elements of contracts became more interesting for accountants through RevRec and leases and SOX and all these things. And so
Mm-hmm.
OCR was like the torque that propelled us for a couple years. And then 2022, ChatGPT splashes, and there's like this torque about Gen AI and like text-based chat, and that gave us like this other, exciting thing to chase. And now agentic is kind of bubbling up, and so we've looked at this a while, but new agentic models, theories, advancements, or really the advancements of the LLMs have enabled agentic type work. And so we're in the workflow world. So I'm saying it's like a third kind of torque of AI momentum. There's a lot of questions around: will people pay for it? Do they care? Is it spooky? Does it provide value? But it's definitely fun. So I guess we got to talk a little bit about AI. Like, what's what's your AI like? What are you guys doing with AI? Right?
Yeah. I'm going to take a really quick second to um, put in a shout out to my co-founder
Yeah.
and his book, which is doing really well. It's called Designing LLM Applications, I think,
Okay.
on the O'Reilly platform. It's an exceptional textbook if you're interested in designing applications using LLMs, using uh, AI. And
Amazing. By the
I,
way,
yeah,
okay, I got it. Designing Large Language Model Applications, a Holistic Approach by Suhas Pai, Pai, and it's got a 30-day return guarantee. So you guys should definitely check it out. Okay, got it. So tell us about the book, and then about how you guys are thinking about AI.
yeah. So the book, only I think half the chapters are out. It's still flying off the shelves, regardless. But I do think Suhas is going to be chatting about agentic frameworks, et cetera, in the later chapters. So please look out for that. He also does a lot of talks. Um, I'm sure there's lots of recordings somewhere on the internet of him talking about agentic frameworks, et cetera. But one of the things that we see come up a lot is models are so powerful now. When we started, we were using BERT. I don't know if you
No,
remember. It
Bert
was
Panda. I'm on a roll today. Yeah.
so BERT was a very popular open source language model back in the day. Like if you came out in 2017 or 2018 or 2016, one of those years, um, when we were starting the business, and it was hugely powerful. Language models were this incredible step forward, but they had lots of limitations. And our research at that time was overcoming the limitations of BERT style language models in the context of securities filings. And now the base models that we use and train and work with are just so much more powerful. And frankly, I've spent years saying, you know, math isn't something that language models can do. And now we're in a place where we can have models, you know, assign a task to a calculator in a way that's a lot more effective and
Right.
actually do some basic mathematics and do comparative analysis, a lot of things that really weren't possible before. And that has completely opened up and expanded what we do, uh, and made, we now specialize in really nailing advanced multi-step mathematical calculations for specific workflows in equity research and investment research, which was never a place that I expected to be.
That
So
is
this is
awesome.
super exciting. Yeah.
That's awesome. So it's similarly jumping on the AI bandwagon early, getting accelerated along the way. You've got a great co-founder with this new book to check out. The last minute here, what's next for Hudson? What's next for Kris? Is it more of the same? Is it having fun? Do you guys have another vision another level of the vision? Is it agentic? How are you thinking about the next few years? And by the way, you could say it's a secret. You have to check it out. You have to follow us.
So this is only semi-secret. A quick sneak peek here. We are launching the Hudson Labs co-analyst, which is, we refuse to call it a chatbot, but it's specialized for equity research, investment research workflows, particularly ones that require using both math and qualitative information in a single query. And we're allowing our users to get direct access to our infrastructure and our models using natural language queries, which is going to be really cool. And yes, it does touch on and use agentic frameworks.
Very cool. Very cool. Man, we should have done this as a CFA accredited, because all of the I was going to say bros, I'll just say it, all of the equity research, men and women out there, maybe is there like CFA accreditation? I feel like the accountants aren't. I'm sure there's some accountants, some CPAs out there who love equity research, but I mean, that sounds awesome. I might check it out too. And you guys have Hudson Labs. You guys have like more of a self-serve option as well. Like if you're an independent equity analyst, you could go online and pay to use Hudson, or is it only funds and corporations?
We absolutely work with we definitely work with investors who
Yeah.
are managing a lot of money but may not have large teams. So
Interesting.
yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, this has been fun today. Kris, maybe part 2 we'll do like agentic AI looking back, like 1 year later, we'll come back and share some updates on what's advanced.
Yeah, we should invite Suhas for that. He has
Let's do it. Let's
yeah.
do it. Suhas, I hope you get a couple extra books here. But I mean, look, Kris, it's been good seeing you, talking to you today. It's been fun. It's been insightful. And I just appreciate the time and the insights.
No, I really appreciate your time. And, I wish we had more time so I could hear what the next steps are for Trullion.
Oh, wow. Well, okay. So we'll do that part 2 with the next step, Trullion, and then a check-in, a look back at Hudson. But until then, I guess thanks everyone for watching and listening to the show, and we'll see you next time.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
Thank you.